Well, hello, everyone. Amanda and Seth, thank you very much for having us. We're excited to have some time with the other DevExpress users out there. Jer and I have been working together for, I don't know, Jer, how long has it been now?
It's been a couple years.
A couple of years.
Pretty general.
And we go way back into XtraReports land and all the stuff that we'd rather not mention nowadays. But reporting in general is really important for any business, any company that wants to aggregate their data and display it to the users. And it hasn't been easy. And Jeremiah actually found DevExpress XtraReports a couple years ago and brought me in on it. And today we're going to show you some cool things that we've been able to put together. A lot of the concepts are stuff that Jeremiah and I have come up with, and primarily Jer, because he is smarter than I am. And a lot of the code we did together. So let's get going here.
So if any of the demos don't work, I take responsibility for
that. Well, let's take a look at the reporting landscape we have out here with DevExpress. We have up top here, we have Visual Studio integration. We have on the left, we have the end user report designer, and on the bottom right picture you can see the code. But there's a lot of moving pieces. You've got to design your reports, you've got to code your reports, you've got to hook them up to a data source schema, you've got to actually pass it the right data and preview it, and then deploy it and execute it at runtime. So some of the problems that we've seen in working with reports is it's a classic designer and developer problem. We see that a lot of times with web design, and we've seen several solutions in the XAML land, how we solve those things. But in reporting, we're faced with the same problem. We've got code and we've got visual design. And the question is, how do we make that process easy and smooth, because really we've got two separate tasks going on. If we look at the typical workflow, it's synchronous. The business expert, conceives a report idea. It's a business need that someone needs something spit out for. But the business expert, they're in charge of coming up of what that requirement is, and then they communicate that to the developer. And because the report involves code and database connections and all these things, the business expert can't do it. He's got to communicate that to the developer designs it and codes it, and then it goes back to the business expert for review. There's obviously changes because it wasn't quite what I wanted, or I wish we could tweak this a little bit. Then it goes back to the developer, and that cycle continues. And in the meantime, you got the developer waiting for the business guy, and you got the business guy waiting for the developer. And how can we improve the workflow so that we have the developer and the designer, the business expert, working at the same time? So our solution essentially allows the developer and business expert to work in parallel at the same time and put the business expert back in charge. The business expert obviously knows what the needs are for the report, what formatting might be required, what data is obviously going to be required, and how they want it to lay it out. So what we're going to show you today is how the business expert can get in front of this end user designer and use the tools that DevExpress has done a really good job of putting together, along with some code that we've kind of plugged into the end user designer to make it a more seamless workflow for the business expert. And then we're going to show you the developer side in Visual Studio how we can publish data sources and also publish code. One of the real advantages here you'll see is that the developer is going to use his native environment, which is Visual Studio. We can export our data sources and our code actions, and you can even share code across reports. Right now, the only way to do that is either through scripting or a common base class, but we want to show you today how you can take one set of code and kind of be able to move that across different reports. On the business expert side, you get a full visual designer. There's going to be 0 connection strings. There's no queries, and there's going to be 0 code for the business experts to work with. So with that, let's head over to the VM, to the designer. And here you go. Here is the Ryan's report designer. It's Ryan and Jeremiah's report designer. And this is the end user designer as it is. It comes from DevExpress. But we've added a couple things, and let's go get them here. So we're going to create a new report. And if there's any questions, please feel free to, Amanda, let us know. I'm open to making this a dialogue as long as we can keep it to the hour scheduled. So when you create a new report in the designer, you'll realize that there are no fields available. There's nothing to bind to. And if I'm the designer, I don't know how to connect to a database. I don't know if it should be MySQL or SQL Server, or what data is it, production, or is it development? Is it, those are things that I shouldn't have to worry about. So what we've done is created a button up here for select data source, which allows the developer to expose to the designer several data sources that might be available. Now these are going to pull data over the web, over OData, but it doesn't matter. It could be pulling from anything, anywhere, using passwords if you need. But again, the developer wraps it up, bundles it really nicely, and provides that in a drop-down here. So let's go look at some products from Northwind. Pull these up, and you'll notice that now we have the fields available. And this is our schema, you'll see. So let's go grab product name. We'll put it here. And we're just going to make a little report. Let's grab some units in stock and also the unit price. Okay, maybe we can format this a little bit. Currency, okay. So I built my report as a designer, as a business guy, and now I want to see some data. And what we've done is because we've brought that data in, not only is it schema that gives us our field list, but also now we have full preview. So here are all the products pulling over from our online database, and here's our report. Now, if I save this, let's put it in reports. We'll call this products, okay? Close it. Let's reopen it. And normally what would happen is you just get your blank field list again. But because of how we're pulling in these data sources from that drop-down, the report itself remembers, hey, this is the last data source that was selected, and it's going to open it right back up again. So it's going online, querying Northwind, and here you go. All of our data is back, and we even have our preview ability here. So the idea here is that the designer, your business experts, can design the reports they need really quick. Your developers simply make your business data available, and several people can create the reports that they want. Now, let's talk about code. You see there's something called scripts here. Now, this is why developers have had to do this stuff, because none of this stuff in scripts is strongly typed, and people don't know how to code. Designers don't want to code. Business guys just want to just drag, drop. And at Dynamic Benefit Systems, which is the company I work with, we've used this successfully, where our insurance expert has been able to create all the reports he wants, and all I do is expose the data sources and the code actions, as you'll see in a little bit here. So let's try to do some code. If I'm the developer now, so let's say that we want unit price to be yellow. So let's go over here to our, this is WinForms, this is the designer app. And it's doing a couple things. It's just hooking up design time data sources and whatnot. But the most important thing for us today is the runtime actions. Now, we're going to create a runtime action, and it's going to work on all labels. So a runtime action is basically the ability for code to be written outside of the report, but run on a report. that was already written by the designer. So here we're gonna create an action that's going to affect labels. It's only going to affect labels that have the name "Make Me Gold," and we're going to change the back color of our labels. Now, because these are delegates, because they're actions, they can be applied to any label on any report. So let's run this, and just so I don't misspell it, let's copy that and run our app again. Okay, let's open our report. It's going to go to Northwind. Sometimes the internet should be faster than it is. So, and here we go with preview. Now, what we wanted to do was take this label, and let's go ahead and go down to label name, I believe we were looking for, and let's say make it gold. So now we have code that's written outside of the report that the designer doesn't have to be aware of while he's writing his app, while he's writing his report. The developer can add stuff and write stuff based on a contract. And if you're familiar at all with interfaces, this is a very simple form of an interface where we agreed that the name of the item that you wanted colored was going to have this name. So it's essentially a contract by string between the designer and the developer. But what it does, most importantly, is it lets the designer to work on his reports and get the reports he wants written, and it allows the developer to write the code that goes behind it, but separate it from the actual report class. Okay, and this also means that this code is now shareable and runnable across multiple reports. So that's a simple example with Northwind products. Let's try something else. Let's get out of here. We can save this guy. Let's create another report. Now you saw we had another data source. For Northwind orders. Let's pull that up. Now, one of the things in reporting that we find to be really important are subreports, because subreports allow you to have common pieces of your report and reuse that in several different other reports without having to rewrite that stuff. So we really wanted to get subreport integration into the designer, and I'm happy to say that we did. And so we're gonna show that today. So I've got a list of orders. My GoToMeeting thing is covering up my window. There we go. All right, so let's bring over an order ID, okay? And let's bring over let's do this. Let's do it without. Let's show you how you do it without a subreport. Okay, you would right-click and go Insert Detail Report for Order Details. And that allows you to get the order details collection. Okay, so let's go over here and say, hey, I've got a product name. Here's the product, and let's bring over the quantity and price as well. So quantity, okay, and unit price. All right, so let's run this guy. This is, again, without any subreports, just to show you what it would do. And run it, looks something like this. Okay, now let's carve out this piece right here, and let's make that a subreport. So what I'm going to do is I can delete these guys. Product name, quantity, unit price. Okay, let's make a subreport. This is really, really funny. So as you'll notice for GoToMeeting, I have to decrease the size of my my screen. So hopefully we're going to get access to the subreport. Is that it? Oh, look at that. Are we good? All right. So we've got a subreport created here. Now, typically with DevExpress stuff, it's very powerful because it allows you to do a lot of different things, but on the other hand of the powerful side is we lose some simplicity. Normally when you drag and drop a subreport, you're going to have to write code behind that hooks up the data source for the subreport. What we wanted to do, again, is because this is meant for design time, this is meant for your business guys to write the reports fast. So what we wanted to do is automatically pass order details into the subreport. So when I double-click here, normally it'd be opening up a blank report, but today you're going to see this field list is blank, but don't worry, it's just a redraw. If I switch tabs and come back, here we go. You will see now that this is an order detail data source, okay? Let's do the exact same thing. Let's drag product name over. Let's drag, we want a quantity. Good, and also unit price. And let's bring these over. And we'll even format this guy. Okay, currency. There we go. Let's wrap this up. Let's hit preview, and now in this window, which is the subreport, we can actually preview the subreport completely separately. And again, we haven't played with any connection strings. We haven't queried any database. This is just navigating the data sources that were provided. And it gives us the ability to view the subreport solo, on its own. So let's save this guy, and we'll put him back in here. And this is an order detail. Okay? Now if we close this guy, you'll notice that automatically DevExpress, again, I'm fighting GoToMeeting. If you navigate down here, you'll notice that we have, if I scroll to the end here, order detail. Yep, so DevExpress automatically sets the report source for us, which means when we hit preview, there you go. Now we have subreport capability right in the designer, where you can drag a subreport, double-click, and instantly be able to have access to all the schema and preview in the designer. So let's save this guy, and we'll save this as order. So that's a large part of what we wanted to show today. If we go over and create another report, let's do this. Let's open up the subreport on its own, and you'll see that a subreport is really just another regular report, and which means we have the ability to do design time on its own because it remembers the data source that was passed into it, and it'll reopen that. The important thing here is that when we hit preview, at runtime, the order detail is getting passed into the subreport, and that's not default behavior for the designer. So it might look, wow, that was no big deal, and that's the intended result, so that your designers really have the ability to work fluidly when they're working and navigating in the designer. Let's see here. So we saw just a little bit ago how we have we're in Visual Studio, and we wrote a runtime action, and maybe we can go do that again and do something a little more fun. They were exported by MEF in the background, the nice thing is that you don't have to know these things as a designer to work with it. And we can share code across reports. We can show that a little bit here as well. And the visual designer in the IDE, for the business guy, we have no connection strings, no queries, and best of all, no code behind. So we showed in the product demo that the preview worked, that we were able to reopen, that we were able to change the color on the background of any one of the labels. We can there's a contract going on between the designer and the developer, and together using simple naming of your XR controls, you're able to run actions across any one of your reports. We showed order and order detail. We showed the order and order detail subreport, and we also showed that opening the subreport carried over the data source. Now, one thing I want to show is that it also works for collections. So right now when we're previewing, we are previewing in the detail band, okay? So each order detail is getting fired right in here. What we also did was the ability to, if we insert a band, a report header. Now in XtraReports, anytime you're passing in a data source to a report, you are passing in a collection. It's required. You're not able to pass a single order detail. You're required to pass a collection. So in this band, we're able to pull out the current order detail. What we're really doing is we're adding it to a collection, and then we're assigning it to the subreport. And because we were dealing with collections in the first place, if you wanted to drag that up here, what's going to happen is we've written the code to know that if you're in a report header or report footer, you're not dealing with a single item, as in the detail band, you're dealing with the whole collection. So what should happen is if we preview this, you'll see the same result, but what happened is we didn't iterate for every order detail. We just iterated one time, and the entire collection was passed into our subreport. Amanda, how are we doing?
You're doing good. We did have one question that popped up about what version you're version you're using.
Sure, this is DevExpress 11.1. Okay.
Okay. But this original code was written against 10.2. So
correct.
we just moved it up to 11.1 for this demo.
Correct. And the code we're going to be releasing today is open source. It's on GitHub. And like Jer said, we wrote it against 10.2. We ran the project converter, which you should all already know about. Right here, it's DevExpress project converter. And you can upgrade to a newer version or likely even go back to 10.2. So we showed the order and order detail collection. If we look at some of the technical implementations of this, we have design time data sources. What does that look like? Well, let's go take a look. So we have a Northwind OData data source, and to create that, it's actually very simple. For the products, we simply have a iReport data source, and it looks like this. You got me the data source. It's that simple. So to expose to the designer, to the end user designer, all you have to do is implement this interface. So again, you could get your data source from SQL Server. You could get it from the file system, some serialized data, or as we're doing, a Northwind OData feed. It comes from anywhere. So it could be entity framework or any ORM. That's one of the wonderful things about DevExpress XtraReports is you can pass it literally any data source and it's going to pick it up. So to implement that, all we did was we are serializing here just because for the demo it was kind of slow to do the fetch every time. But here's all the query looks like. You know, you write a link query against your any link provider you have, and there's your data source. And to export it, again, we're using MEF. So all you have to do is add one attribute to your data source, and it's visible. Excuse me, it's visible in the UI. If I wanted to change the name of this to, we change this. Next time we go in there, we'll be able to see that. So that's the design time data source. The report has a custom base class and custom serialization. And the reason we do that is for several reasons. Number one, we added that button for select data source at the top. And when you select that, we want to store the selected data source in the report so that next time you open it up, next time the business expert opens up the report, they're right back to the data that they were at before. And to do that, we have a my report base, and it has a list of selected data, the design time data sources. So you can have several design time data sources. You can switch between them. You know, in our case, we wanted the ability to, in insurance, we have several different types of insurance, whether you're a large company or a small company. And the data contained in there is a little different. So what's nice is with one report, we could select one data source and view it as, well, in insurance, it's called age-rated, which is a small group. And we could also select the other data source, which is a large group, and see how the same report in the designer in preview mode would look against both those different data sources. Okay. The other thing is we have custom serialization. If any of you have tried to do serialization in XtraReports before, you can definitely do it, but it's a little rough around the edges because, again, it goes back to that power thing. You can do anything that you want. But again, on the other hand, it makes it a little harder to work with. So what we've tried to do is really make it easy to serialize stuff. And the wonderful thing is you shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to add into anything else that we've already done. Again, we're opening this up so that hopefully we can get improvements from the community on the designer and make it there's a couple things here and there that we'd like to clean up, and because it's on GitHub, we welcome any changes from anyone. But the beauty is that you shouldn't have to add any custom serialization anymore. You shouldn't have to have a custom base class for your reports if you were to go this route. It's the same base class everywhere. In the designer, it's important to get the data source out of the current band. If you remember when we were double-clicking on a subreport, it was getting the order detail right out of that band and passing that right into the subreport. And to do that wasn't quite straightforward, so we made that really easy. And if all you get out of this presentation is a little bit of the code snippets that you can take with you and use in your projects, and that's great. So all those are there. If you need to get a data source out of the current row or the current band, all that's here for you. And then we also pass that data source to the subreport. And to do that, we actually used an action at runtime, and it was right here. So that, and it's really straightforward. It just sets the data source in the subreport using some of those helpers that I mentioned a little bit ago. And at runtime, this is where this is probably one of the most interesting pieces about what we're showing today is if you're using the end user designer and you're saving reports to regex files, and maybe today you're writing scripts, whether or not you're doing that, if we were to go take a look at the files that we saved, let's go do that. Let's go take a quick peek at the files we saved. If I can even get to my desktop. There we go. Let's go take a look at one of these. What does this look like? So there's a little bit of metadata in here that is type information that DevExpress provides, and you'll see it's actually code. This is not serialized a serialized report. It's not like the binary format, or this isn't serialized. This is C#. Crazy. So what's happening is the data in here, this is our serialized information. So this is the list of data sources that were used. Even though it's not readable, that's what that is. And that's where your currently selected data sources is stored. But what you're looking at here is straight up C#. So what DevExpress does at runtime is it basically compiles this and runs it. When you do that, let's say you wanted to add an event listener to to one of your labels, as we saw before. If I wanted to do a simple runtime action on a label, and I want to make it gold, at runtime you won't be able to just attach to the label because, as we just saw, it's C#, it's being compiled, and you don't have a reference to what gets compiled. Does that make sense? So one of the tricky pieces that we were able to figure out for everyone is using an event aggregator. Now, an event aggregator, if you've heard of that before, I don't want to get too off track, but it basically allows that compiled report to talk back to us, okay, using a message. And here's what that looks like. So right before we're printing, we create a before print message, and we publish that message to the event aggregator. And then anyone subscribing to that message, which you will see here, anyone subscribing to those messages can say, oh, there's a report that's about to print. Let me run those runtime actions on it. And what that's going to do is it's going to pass in the subreport data source at runtime and run any other actions we want. So it's one of the innovative ways we were able to talk to reports we didn't have the ability to reference and add event handlers to, because it's getting compiled on the fly. The next thing is the visitor pattern. We have a visitor which basically loops through everything at runtime and runs our code, the runtime actions. Again, the whole purpose of this is to allow the designer to just write the report, not worry about the data sources, and not worry about the code, and let the developer separate his code from that report, let it be reusable for any other reports, but make sure somehow that those actions get fired. And to do that, we have to visit through the report, through all the controls in the report, and go and ask, hey, are there any actions for this control? How about this control? And so on and so forth. And that's how we were able to change the background colors. That's how we were able to separate our code, the developer side, from the designer side.
Excuse me.
Go ahead,
Just to point in, sorry. Just to point out that the visitor pattern is recursive. So if you're talking about subreports that have subreports, you have to recursively go through everything, and the visitor pattern lets us do that.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jer. So if we were to go, open up our program.
I'll just quickly jump in for one more thing while you do that.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm looking here, and we have a bunch of questions piling up. So maybe after this, we want to tackle some of those. I don't know. What do you
go
say?
for it. I can't see on my screen, Jer. So go for it.
Okay.
Okay, so if we open up our order and we preview, we have just what we saw before. It's not a big deal. But let's say we run into our our subreport. I double-clicked it, and it's coming. It's got to go. Remember, it's got to open that report and go to the OData feed. All right, and interesting. I think we got a bug, Jer.
What's that? Did you try changing tabs? Is it not that one?
No, I didn't change tab today. Oh.
That's what I'm here for.
See, I told you he was smarter than me. So let's go do this. Let's make the unit price name. Make me gold. All right, let's preview that puppy. Okay, it works on its own. If I save and head over here back to the report for the order, hit preview. Oh. I think now's the time in the presentation when you're like, I tried it before and it worked.
It looks gold on my.
It looks gold on your screen. Oh, yeah, right.
Totally gold.
All right, good. Well, there's a few quirks we're still working out, but this should be yellow. Absolutely. So, Jared, why don't we open up some of the questions you got there?
Hey guys.
I think it's Amanda's job to read the questions out.
All right. Hey, we do have a lot of questions. There's, let's see, from Quentin, who joined a little late. Filtering the data source for the subreport, like order and order details, how does that process happen? Meaning the subreport knows the collection for that specific order item?
So what? I'm not sure I understand the filtering part. Can you read the question again?
Yeah. He says he wants to ask, filtering, in quotes, the data source for the subreport, like order and order details, how does that process happen?
Sure. Before we get to filtering, what's happening with this pass, what's happening with this action is it's saying, hey, anytime there's a subreport, pass in the data source. Right now it's order details, and that order details collection is getting passed into this report. So that's how we're pushing stuff into the subreports automatically, because normally you would have to write code behind to wire that up. And to do filtering, what we could enable is modifying this report action to where you could do a link query and say only pass these order details across to the subreport. Does that make sense? I hope that answered the question.
Hey, he says an order item has 3 lines as an example, and the next one has 4 lines. How does the subreport know which 3 or 4 lines belong to that specific order item, parent/child relationship?
Okay. Well, what's happening here from the OData side is we are prefetching. Okay, so this is one large object graph that's coming from Northwind, and because of that, everything's pre-related. So it's not like we're doing another query by ID. We actually have all the objects prefetched. And if I can show you that, if we head over to the Northwind side, Northwind orders, I think, is what we're talking about. That's where the prefetch is. Here's the query. And again, most of this stuff is it doesn't need to be here. It's just for serializing locally to speed it up for you guys. You don't have to wait. But this is really what's happening. We're saying, hey, give me all the orders and the order details and the related product. Okay, so we're not having to refetch at all. Does that make sense?
I think the other I think the other part was if you go back to the report designer. I don't know if this was part of the question, but XtraReports is automatically passing in the order details collection to that detail report. Yeah, it's like DevExpress is automatically taking the order and then pushing the order details collection down, and all we're doing is taking that order details collection that we're getting in that detail report and putting it into the subreport. Does that make sense?
I think so, yep. And what's really cool is we can move this anywhere. We can put it in the detail, we can put it in the report header, we can move it down to the footer. Obviously, that won't work because what's going to happen there is it's going to get it's going to get a collection of orders, and this expects order details, so that won't work. But what we did to create this, let's just be more explicit, is we right-clicked, insert detail report, and collect order details. And that's something that's integrated already into the DevExpress XtraReports designer. And then we just drag, set here, preview. Done. What other questions we got, Amanda?
Hey, Ryan, from Francisco, how can the business expert preview the results of a report if I haven't specified the database name yet? He didn't select the company yet, in parentheses.
Okay, if he didn't specify the name of the, if he didn't specify
the database.
Well, the idea here was select data source. Again, this is a sample WinForms app we put together for this, but you can make that button do anything you want. So if you head over to the sample WinForms app, okay, we have just a WinForms picker, and that's it. And you can make this thing do anything you want and pick anything you want. And if we go to the code for this guy, if we go into here, where's the command, select data source, click. This is really what's going on. We're just making some tree view nodes, and we're just getting the first selection and assigning that back to the delegate that was passed in. So you're going to need to provide the designers with some data source. Otherwise they can't. Otherwise they have nothing to drag from, right? Like they need the ability to drag stuff to make the report. So you're going to have to provide something. But what you can totally do, absolutely do, is make modify this form so that you could have another dialog that comes up and says, please select another item within this data set, right? Where let's say I needed to select a certain order or a certain customer, and you could absolutely do that.
But that's the responsibility of the developer.
Correct.
To expose a data source that is what the business person needs.
Right. What else we got, Amanda?
All right, that's all the questions so far.
Okay.
Quentin says, Quentin does say, thanks, that helps. So basically, an order item has a property iList that contains the subreport details for that item. The prefetch populates that specific data related to the specific order item.
Yep.
So the first order item with 3 lines is already pre-populated before the report is previewed so that the data is static at runtime.
Right, right. Whenever you do select data source, whenever you hit this button, we don't care where that data comes from. As long as you implement that one interface that returns just stuff. That's what's great, is you can return stuff from different sources as well. But that assumes, in this case, that you're going to prefetch your objects, right? Another thing we wanted to mention is report guidelines. Because we don't want to put code in the report, what we do is we don't even put calculations in the report. We do calculations outside of the report because technically a calculation is business logic, not report logic. And a lot of times the report writers, because they've been developers, right? Because it's been the developers that have been writing the reports, they put calculations in there. And so what you're finding is a lot of the calculations in the reports are also going to be in the UI, right, for subtotals and things like this. And what we recommend is to don't put any of that stuff in your UI. Don't put any of that stuff in your reports. Pull that back into your business layer where that can be pre-calculated. But before it gets in the report. Because if you want to create another report, you don't want to have to repeat that business logic. And now you make a change in one spot, and you have to go change it in another spot. And now you have kind of this maintenance nightmare with your reporting. And we really want to avoid that. And the nice thing about our approach here today is the designers really don't even have the ability to get in there and write code. You know, their job is just to lay it out, make it look good, and any customizations you need, that's when you go to the developers and say, you know, I just want this changed in this situation, or you know, I want an image to be displayed maybe a little differently at this point in time. And so report actions can be used to inject images as well. We're going to be doing that where, you know, let's say each order is going to need a graph of, you know, a pie graph of the different products that were in it, and by, you know, by how many, by quantity or by price or whatever. But the report actions, the code can be written at the same time then that the report is designed, if we keep them separate. Okay. The next thing that we wanted to talk about today before we wrap it up, and Jerry, I'll let you lead on this, is Silverlight reporting. Jerry, you want to take over?
Sure. I had this. I'm wearing my "I Love Silverlight" shirt today. And I was got it from the fire starter. I was all excited to show off this demo, but I couldn't get it working at the end. So this is. And this is only for this scenario that we're going to talk about is only for Windows clients.
Right, not for Mac.
Right. So what is supported for a Mac client though is what's already supported with the DevExpress XtraReports, is that the server is able to return XAML right to the client, and the server processes the report in the cloud or wherever, and then sends the XAML down to the Silverlight client just for viewing. So that's kind of the traditional, what's traditional nowadays. That's existing already. So, but that requires a direct connection to the internet. That requires that you're always connected because the server has to get you the report. So Ryan, what slide's next?
So if you lose internet access, you kind of draw the line there between the server and client. You can't get that projected display. The server can't run the report and can't show it to you in Silverlight, right?
Sounds good. Yeah.
But because we're on the client already, there's other resources that we have available. Not just Silverlight, but also we have full.net.
Right, and we're making the assumption now that you've planned to go offline, and this is built into your infrastructure. So what the user would do in this case is they'd be in their Silverlight application, they'd pull down data, they would turn off their wireless connection, turn off their 3G connection. They could be in a bomb shelter or some concrete building where there's no connection at all. And as long as they have their data in memory, they are able to have a small little .NET runtime. What we showed so far is the designer previewing and doing all these things with event aggregator and runtime actions and things like that. But what we have also, and this will be on GitHub in the next day or so, is we have a runtime that can, it's a WPF application, and you can, what the Silverlight application can do is it's a trusted out-of-browser application, so it can run COM. So what it can do is it can take the objects it's working in, and my demo was a Northwind order, so I could open an order, type some stuff in, I could serialize that order to JSON, and then I could write a shell command from Silverlight using COM to do a shell command. And then I could call this little WPF application, pass in some parameters in the shell. I could pass in the path to the JSON file. I could pass in the path to the report file. And the little runtime, the little WPF application, it would deserialize the JSON. It would load it into the report viewer, and from the user's point of view, he would be able to click a button on his Silverlight application, and up comes the preview of his report without him having to be connected to the server. Or you could also have, let's say, an export to PDF button, and maybe you don't get a WPF application coming up, but you got a save as dialog where you could save a PDF somewhere. And what we would be doing essentially is running our .NET application from the Silverlight application. But from the user's point of view, they're doing offline reporting with Silverlight.
Right, and we found this to be an important need for dynamic benefit systems because we are writing insurance software. It's actually sales software. So we have the need to be, in front of these employers, showing our software on laptops. And when you're in a foreign environment, when you're at a sales call, you're not guaranteed internet access. Even on 3G, you're just not. You could be in concrete walls or whatever. So the goal, sorry, I lost my headphones. The goal would be to, in the sales presentation, be able to run your reports, be able to show aggregate data, charts, reporting, per employee, and show this stuff right in the sales meeting. And that's powerful. But if you don't have internet, how are you going to do that in Silverlight? If you did WPF, you would have no problem. But if you want to be web-based, if you want to have the ability to run in the browser and reach a broader audience, we're trying to write our app and target Silverlight. So this solution that you're seeing right now is huge for us because it allows us to run our reports in offline mode from Silverlight, which gives us the broadest reach, but not lose any of the functionality with reporting. So as Jer mentioned, typically with a DevExpress Silverlight report engine, the server's doing all the crunching, all the hard work, and it's projecting that display to Silverlight. And when you're offline, you don't have that ability. But this is actually Jer's wonderful concept here that he's come up with, and we think it's pretty cool. It's going to be valuable to us here, and again, we're going to have something up the next few days for you to download and check it out. Are there any other questions, Amanda?
Hey, Ryan. Yes, from Misha, I noticed you're using a Mac. Is Windows performance acceptable under VMware, or is it better to install Windows as a primary OS?
I'll defer to Jer here.
Well, I've got an SSD as my hard drive, and I found that improved the performance for Visual Studio and compiling and all those things. But you are going to get better performance running natively on a Mac. You can just install Windows 7 natively right on there with Boot Camp. You are going to get better performance. I think running in VMware Fusion is acceptable performance. But if you don't find it acceptable, then it's a quick, you get a separate hard drive and just install Windows natively on there.
We have our GitHub address on there as well, Amanda, for people to click on. And maybe, I don't know if in the comments after, if we can make that available somehow on the link.
I'm doing it right now. Metra's commented, I've got a MacBook Pro about 3 years old. I use Parallels with Windows 7. It works quite well.
Yeah.
And then Ramon says, can we download the code of this example?
Sure. We're going to have that up after we're done here. We'll commit what we got and merge it up. Absolutely.
Yep. If you go to that URL at GitHub, you can download a zip file. There's a zip download in GitHub. Probably the best thing to do is to create a GitHub account and follow our repository, because we'll be probably doing quite a few changes in the next little while to get some of our demos and concepts up.
Cool. I just posted that link, everybody, in your chat window. All right.
Good. Any more questions there, Amanda?
Nope. We have gotten to all the questions.
All right. Well, again, Amanda and Seth, thank you very much for having us. We hope that today's been informative and helpful, because again, we're using this for dynamic benefit systems, and it's really helping us because as a developer, I don't want to write reports. To be frank, that's the truth, and I'd rather be writing code and attacking some things that only I can tackle, right? But the business guys, let's get them writing the reports, and they want to play anyway, especially if we do all the work and then take it to them. They're going to have all these comments and feedback, and they're going to criticize it, and, well, I'm not a graphics guy in the first place. So if we can get the business guys doing what they do best, and putting their ideas and giving them the tools to make their ideas come alive for these reports themselves, and full sub-report capability. We have, with this designer that you saw today, we have, I don't know, upwards of 40 reports built with just what you saw today. And it's powerful stuff when I can put this designer in front of our business guys, and they can design the reports they want, and then we can regroup later, and I can say, okay, where do you want that image? And all we got to do is make the text agree on the string names that bring my code and their reports together and brings them to life. So it's been really great for us. We hope that it's beneficial for you. And again, thanks for joining us. Amanda, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan and Jeremiah. It was excellent advice. Ben says, great idea, shows what can be done. Thank you. And Quentin says, thank you, guys. So very, very cool webinar. Well done. All right, everybody. So we have a whole line of webinars that are currently posted throughout October. We have amazing guest presenters coming up, like Ryan and Jeremiah, and DevExpress product training. So check them out and register at devexpress.com/webinars. Later today at noon Pacific Standard Time, our weekly Code Rush feature workshop with Mark Miller and Rory Becker. Every Wednesday, Mark and Rory build a new feature for Visual Studio using Code Rush and the DX Core. And tomorrow at 10 a.m., Chris G. Williams is back with more on Windows Phone 7, consuming web-based services from Windows Phone apps and games. And also tomorrow at noon Pacific Standard Time, you don't want to miss our Build Conference recap and a preview of what's coming in 11.2 with the entire DevExpress management team. And then finally, Friday at 10 a.m., ASP.NET MVC Grid View, edit the grid view using inline, pop-up, or custom template edit forms with Mehul Hari. And again, if you missed anything from this webinar or you want to review any previous webinars, please visit us on the DevExpress channel at tv.devexpress.com. And again, thanks so much to Ryan and Jeremiah. Thank you all for joining us, and thanks for choosing DevExpress.